Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Let me invite you today for a forecasting video game sale presentation, where I will try to briefly explain you about the possible tools and methods of sales evaluation for video games. It's one of those evergreen questions that you will probably hear a lot of times on the way to the launch of your games. It's always being asked by publishers, sometimes by investors. It's how many units you think your game will sell. Need to say this is not an easy question to answer. I did spend lots of time finding out the most accurate ways to forecast the future, and ended up a little bit like the guy from the presentation. The glass ball would be helpful and magic, but being sure what the future will bring is always uncertain, and that is why I would like to give you today a little bit more insight about how to bit more accurately forecast your sales. But first, let me introduce myself. So I'm Mike. Nice to meet you, everyone, once again. I'm a co-founder of Klabater. I have a little bit more than 15 years of experience in the video games industry. I've started in IDG, then most of my career I spent in CD Projekt, being responsible for sales and distribution of various games, not only the ones made by CDP, but also games from all big, small, medium publishers and developers worldwide. This was the boxed, still physical distribution, but also a little bit of digital of Poland and Central Eastern European region. But recently, starting 2018, I started working as under the Klabater brand. Currently, we published 15 games. We produced one our own, which is Crossroads Scene. And this gave me lots of experience and lots of data that I used for creating an internal tool. It's not a big thing, but it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet with the calculus that helps you to evaluate and also to estimate your sales. As I told you, a bit more accurate, but don't take it for like it's going to be a 100% accurate tool. It's rather gives you an area where the final result of your game will end up. That person over here is not me 20 years from now, but it is a very famous physician and Nobel Award winner, Niels Bohr. He's very famous for lots of things. One of them is inventing an atomic model, but he's also famous for this quote about predictions, which I totally agree with. His prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. Predicting the present is awesome because you can experience past because you remember it, but guessing is always guessing, and future is about guessing. When I was a bit younger manager, I was always asked this question, like, Michał, how much do you think you will sell this game? If you want to spend this amount of money, you need to tell me how much you will earn. You know this question because you probably had them hundreds of times. I was angry by that time. How can I guess what the game will sell? I don't know. You know, I need to spend millions of zlotys on marketing and then probably will sell, but it cannot sell as well. Now being older and being sort of like an owner of the company, I'm kind of more cautious about estimating how much I will spend, because I know that forecasting sales is first. So first you need to forecast how much you will earn before you start spending. That's my advice. But of course, forecasting is a lot about assumptions, and this small trick from this Dilbert nicely sums it up. So, you know, my revenue forecast, and what are the assumptions? The assumptions, you can make as many of them as you want. And the spreadsheet, the Excel will accept everything. So always with the forecast, be realistic. Some people will say pessimistic, but I think that pessimistic and realistic combined together is the most safe way to forecast your sales. It's better to nicely disappoint when you reach a success rather than find out you overspent 2 or 3 times because your game eventually sold only a couple of 100 units when you were counting for tens of millions of units. And the last but not least quotes in this presentation, it's from the classics, so it's mine. Forecasting sales is a fundamental question. Yeah, no, I've heard it tons of times. Most definitely your financial officers, your chief financial officer or directors will ask this question to you or to your team members. Your shareholders will ask that question. Investors will ask that question sooner or later. Even journalists now are asking these questions. So knowing an answer to how much units you will sell, what's your sales forecast, I think is a key knowledge and a key element of having a control over your commercial destiny of your game. So maybe one day this quote's going to be as famous as the one from Newsboard. Who knows? But I hope that it can happen one day. But that's enough of quotes for today. Now let's do some forecasting. What I will show you next is a very simple calculus in Excel that I prepared based upon the data I've gathered from this 15 plus video games that we published on PC and on consoles. We put it together and we use it in Klabater in order to understand what is the potential of the game. This tool needs to be used in a rolling model, so you need to constantly update it with your current data, because the closer to the release date, the more accurate the results will be. Also, understanding how the game will finally perform will help you out with getting a bit more accurate analysis and the result of this tool. What is worth mentioning is that there is a decent choice of other calculators of this sort on the market. If you look in the internet and look in them like at games discoverability or at how to market your games, there is one made by Travelers Rest. Those calculators, more or less accurate, more or less complex way, they are available over there, and I totally encourage you all to use them, because the knowledge that is in them is based upon the knowledge of smaller or medium publishers that have some sort of roster of games published like us. Games Discoverability, I think, have made a survey, anonymous survey among 100 plus developers with their games. So the numbers of those, the conversion ratio that I will later show you is also very accurate with them. Then, well, I was basing upon my numbers, plus I of course cross-checked them with other calculators available on the market, and it proved to be accurate in lots of cases. In some, there were some discrepancies, but I will also try to later bit more describe what are the factors that can make the forecast a bit more inaccurate. All right, so now let's try to switch to the Excel, which is the most difficult part while recording this session at Zoom. So allow me for a second while I share a different view. All right. Okay, there you go. I hope it's visible for everyone. So this is relatively simple, as I mentioned, it's straightforward Excel sheet with basic information that can be useful for forecast. It has big 2 sections. So let's say the section from the row 1 to 14, it's forecasting of sales in units per each of the platforms. As you can see, PC, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. Then there's a division between the sales from the first week, sales in the first month, and the sales in 1 year from the launch. Some calculators that you might be able to find have also year 2 and year 3 on top of that. but I tend to focus only on year one because this is a perspective that is interesting for anyone, for our shareholders, from our financial perspective. We need to understand how the game will perform financially, and 1 year is the longest we can wait. And first week is the most important metric because it's all based upon the result of the performance of the first week. The second half of the calculus over here, the one starting with row 17 and ending with row 34, is the, say, financial analysis. So this is also a simplified structure of revenue you will get from the earlier forecasted in the section 1 units sold. Right, so let me just shortly describe what cells are doing what. As you can see, the blue ones are the ones that you can manipulate and that are sort of input data, let's say. The key, absolutely key cell is the A2, which is the number of wish lists. As you know, wish lists are famous or infamous at the moment because you want it or you don't want it. The Steam is the leading platform. Most of indie developers, they do games for PC and then they port to consoles. And when it comes to PC, there is no other better metric available publicly to anyone than the wish list from Steam. Wishlist is a soft promise. So this is if someone is wishlisting your game, it doesn't necessarily mean he wants to buy it immediately. It's just his interest. It's just him. You caught his attention, but you haven't yet totally convinced him to buy this game. This is also very important to understand. Number of wish lists is a big amount, and then the conversion out of it is definitely going to be lower. I'm addressing this because I've heard theories that number of wish lists needs to be multiplied to get a sales result. No, it needs to be multiplied, but not by smaller numbers. Definitely not multiply, and then the sales not going to be higher than your wish list when you launch. So this is the input for the wish list numbers. So those are the ones that you will be gathering throughout all the process from starting your Steam store page up to the launch. How to gather the wish list, that's a subject for the whole different presentation and whole different science, I would say. There's lots of tutorials, lots of articles about how to be efficient about it. What I need to say is that, of course, you need to be active on every field of public media in order to grow this number. The more you will have at launch is simply the better. There's no other hint that I can give you here. So attending events, both digital, physical, sending press releases, taking care for being reviewed, streamed, reaching YouTubers, influencers, advertising in the social media, being active in community building. These all will always lead to a wish list growth. Also remember that whatever you do, in order not to waste the potential, always end up with a CTA, wishlist now, or wishlist my game, because you want people to sort of subscribe to the wishlist if you want your game to be commercially successful in the future. The other cells are obvious, right? So your price, which will be a basis of a calculation of your revenues, the price will be then decreased by the platform cut, which is an average 30%. The average price drop, it reflects the price drops you will be implementing through the first year of the game sales. Usually some developers add a small price drop at the beginning of the sales for the first week. Then throughout the year, you will be having different opportunities, either join some Steam, big sales or smaller sales that you can do yourself. Still, I assume that 20%, perhaps a little bit more, 30% is what on average you will be decreasing your game price in the first year. All depends also on how the game will perform within the first month. If it's selling well, if it meets your expectations, you'll probably be more reluctant to decrease the price. If it doesn't fit the sales curve you were planning, the discounting can help. It doesn't necessarily help that much as people think, but for sure it does give a little bit of a boost to the sales. And last, this here sells, those are the indications for the ratio PC versus consoles when it comes to sales. So this is just for information purposes. I've added this percentage over here in the sales for the first week, first month, first years of sales. As you can see, the percentages are 30 for Switch, 30 for Xbox, and 25 for PlayStation. This is because of a Klabater specifics. Our games, which are basically a strategy or a tycoon games, basically 2D text-heavy games, are not exactly console friendly titles, I would say. So out of all the platforms, the game performs best at Switch, then Xbox, and least efficient they are on PlayStation. But if you would be releasing a 3D, top-notch, extra graphic, a platformer or an action adventure game, perhaps PlayStation can be 30% and Switch a bit lower, depends, right? So this is just for really indicative reasons. But what I want to add here is that you can see how important it is to release the game for the multi-platforms. If there is any chance you can do it, or possibility, you have some assets, skills, do it, because there you have a chance, number 2, number 3, number 4, chance to sell more than just rely on one platform, and that's about it, right? So, yes. So we have a test scenario with the 15,000 wishes here. That's quite high, and that probably is difficult to achieve. Not every game can achieve such a high number. So let's say 5,000 for at first to see the different scenarios, right? So yeah, we put 5,000 here. As you see, the calculus did auto-calculate itself. And now what we have over here is the PC sales in the first week. It's going to be 1,000 units. While the first year, it's going to be something about 3,000 units sold. I assumed you will be making a console. So altogether with all the other platforms, you can sell 2,000 in the first week or 6,500 in a whole year. If you wouldn't have the consoles, the result would be just this. So that's why it's always important to have other platforms. And that is a very important answer also, that if you make it early enough, you can still make different decisions publishing decisions regarding your game. So let's analyze the situation. For example, you finished your development, or you are very close to an end. You have 5,000 wish lists, and you spent already, let's say, $100,000 for the production, just to make it easier. So you will know that even if you release the game for all the platforms with the 5,000 wish lists, it is most likely that the first year from the launch, you will not get a break-even point, because your total revenue is, after all the deductions of the platforms, taxes and stuff, is close to $60,000, which is definitely not 100 you already spent. So what decisions you can make, it's up to you, but I would either postpone the launch and wait a bit more, accelerate the number of wishlist acquisition, because that means the game will not perform as you want to. Of course, always bear in mind, it's not only about wishlists, it's also about all the other activities you will be doing, the press release, the advertising, the stuff, but only combined together, this will work. If you have publications and there's no growth in wishlists, that means that perhaps users are not willing to trust you, or they are not interested within your game. So, of course, having these numbers can be depressing, especially if you're very close to the launch and you see that you are not meeting this break-even point, or that you're overspending and your budget is already on the red, but you still need to invest in the game, and you see that the number of wishlists is really low. But that at least gives you a chance to early understand and do not lie to yourself that the game will earn millions of dollars, right? It's important to understand this. Of course, there is still lots of things you can always do to try to accelerate the wishlist number. Probably lots of other digital dragon presentation will tell you what to do about it. But still, so if you, let's get back to a bit more optimistic scenario. So let's say you have roughly 15,000 wish lists. So as you can see, the number grew recently. If you spend $100,000 so far, you already have 200,000 here in the forecast, which makes you on a safe side. You can even spend a bit more, perhaps to grow the number, to grow the quality a bit, and there is still a buffer for some extra spendings. And you know you're gonna earn up at least in a year time. You're gonna be very close to your break-even point within the first month, right? So, so that is a very important answer. So you can get quite early in your production cycle. A bit reference to the console. So, so yeah, as I mentioned, it's 30-25 are the ratio that comes out of the equation from our catalog. I think that, let's say, arcade games can be really can perform much better on the Switch. At the same time, if you have FPS, cool graphic games, they will perform much better on the consoles. So this can be a key factor for your game success, because if you work it out properly, they can help you outlive the sales from Steam, which, as you can see, still is generating the biggest amount of sales, but this one is generating almost second to that. Let's stop here for a second to understand these ratios, these conversion rates. So as I've mentioned, wish lists are a soft promise. People are sort of subscribing to your game in order to be in touch with it. Some of them do even follow the game, except for wishlisting it. Those will be also receiving all the updates or the changes on the Steam card you'll be making, and they are even more valuable than the people that just wishlisted. Those who wishlisted will have a notification when the game is released. So those people, first of all, they need to be fresh. So 1 year is, I think, the most accurate and the longest they can wait. Of course, if you're making some, I don't know, like a big expected RPG game, perhaps they can wait for a bit more than a year. But for most of our indie games with new brands, I think that any wish list older than 1 year can be outdated. In the first week, the conversion is going to be 0.2 out of your wish lists. That gives you these 3,000 units over here. But only if the game reviews are minimum positive or mostly positive. This is, let's say, a neutral scenario. It's very difficult to achieve. Those first people that will buy your game, your core audience, are the ones that will convert most easily. They need to write you a good review. They need to provide you with a positive or mostly positive reviews. For that, if that happens, the rest will follow, and the sales curve will perform as here with the other parameters, so like 1.3, 3.3 in a year. But if a situation goes the other way around, and unfortunately, you will lose the momentum. You will release the game. The first week conversion will be still 0.2 because your core audience will buy the game, but they will end up with giving you mixed or, worst case scenario, negative reviews. Then don't count that even with the huge number of wishes you will have the conversion rate same as here. It's gonna be flat, and unfortunately, the chances to go out of this death loop are really low. perhaps if the game has a mixed opinion in the beginning and you work out fast, provide people with parts, with the proper communication, you work out with the community, you can still lift it up a little bit to the mostly positive scenario. We had such situation with Crossroads Scene and we managed for a time being. But if it's negative and then you get more and more negatives, then unfortunately it will cut down the sales and the sales is going to be absolutely flat. So probably it won't reach 1.3 in the first month, and it's going to be much, much lower than 3.3 in a year. That is why these two elements need to be in time together. Good reviews together with a big number of wishlists. Only this will give you the proper sales. What else is worth mentioning here is that if also you will have this conversion rate only if at the same time when the launch is you are properly PR and you have some sort of messaging to the market. If the game has a big wishlist number, but at the launch it's silent about it and it cannot read reviews, the curve can also be much less steeper than if it had a proper backup from a PR activity, from the media and the influencers. Right, so, and that's about it. There's no big rocket science here. It's all about simply statistics plus conversion rates. Gathering wish lists is a subject that is also changing in time. This is also unfortunately working a little bit against us. So every year is different, and the ratio here is calculated upon games released 2019, 2020. In 2021, I can already see that some games perform differently. Some people, some users on Steam, they do also perform differently. The Steam is constantly changing, it does changes as well its user structure. So the different users can have different behavior when it comes to wishlists. But still, like the universal truth is that the more wishes you get, the more chances you have for the big sales, and that's undeniable, right? Okay, so the last thing that let me just show here briefly is like one of the commonly used element of forecasting is benchmarking. So people do tend to benchmark their own new productions to the old ones that reach success. So the investors, the media can somehow find a common ground and understand what the game is about and what chances it does have. So sometimes you won't be able probably to get a straightforward answer from someone how many units or how many wishes he has, because it's confidential data. So if you want to estimate it, there's two good ways to do it. Kind of common knowledge, say practical knowledge behind it. So if you want to estimate sales of the game that you don't have anyone to ask for, so you can try to get its number of reviews from Steam and multiply them by 38. Sounds a little bit magical, but it does this, works, and it's a universal number that is used in 2020 at least. It was, and it was proved to be correct. But if the game is not released and you want to compare yourself and see what is the potential of this similar title and how it is gathering wish lists, perhaps you want to use their marketing strategy for your own purpose and you want to check if it's successful, then you can always try to look for the number of Steam group members or Steam threads that it has and then multiply that by 8, which will, and this number will give you a wishlist overall number that this title has. Of course, as again, this is just a indication, statistical thing. So from time to time, on some of the cases, it might be not as accurate as with the other ones, but still, it's still better than guessing or relying just on your faith that the game will sell or that the game will perform. Right, so now let's get back to my great presentation. As I want to share a bit more, and as I actually want to, as I want to just recap what I've said. So once again, wish lists, like it or not, are the key parameter of sales forecast. Without them, you're blind. The more you get them, the more success you'll have. Remember, they are not sales one-to-one. One wish list means 0.2 of 1 unit sold. Forecasts are based on the wish list, so they are converting wish list to sales with a specific aspect. It can be different aspect for each of the game, and it can be different in time. Conversion rates that I was showing to you was based upon sales of my games plus the ones I found publicly available in the network. I encourage you to gather data from the games. The more you publish, the more data you will have, and it's going to be easier for you to forecast. Now, fourth, conversion rate is prone to overall review status. So 65, 75 is neutral. Anything above 75 is going to be a bonus. But if you go below 65, that means that the curve won't work and that the scenario is going to be rather negative. And last, the wish lists that are older than 1 year might not be as caloric as the new ones you have recently acquired. First week conversion rate 0.2, so 1 wish list, 0.2 sold units. 1 month conversion rate 1.3, and it is dropping lately. And a year conversion rate 3.3, and it is dropping lately as well. So the tendency at the moment is that those two factors are diminishing. For the consoles, but it's a Klabater specific numbers. We use 35 for Switch, 20 for PlayStation, and 25 for the Xbox to calculate. So I'll be finishing my presentation now. I hope it was practical and it was helpful. If you would have any questions, I think there's going to be a Q&A session, so you might be able to ask them to me directly, and I'll be very happy to answer. I'm also very open to discuss with anyone, so feel free to reach me on Twitter, on the Discord, on LinkedIn. I always love to chat about video games and share a little bit of my experience as well as to learn new things. So I encourage you to contact with me. And thank you for your time. And I hope that the presentation did help and clean up a little bit on how to forecast your game. So have a good day, and hopefully see you soon.